So if you take a cup of stormwater runoff from a perfectly compliant, pristine construction site right now and put it under a microscope, you won't just see dirt.
No, definitely not.
You will see thousands of microscopic shards of plastic. And as of just 9 days ago, on April 2nd, 2026, the federal government officially decided that those invisible shards are, well, your legal liability.
It's huge.
Welcome to this Scaling Legends Deep Dive. If you are a construction business owner, a project executive, or, a superintendent navigating the modern job site, this one is entirely built for you.
It is a massive paradigm shift. I mean, we are moving from regulating what we can visually identify on a site.
Like a diesel spill, right?
Exactly, a diesel spill or a blowout in a silt fence. We're moving from that to regulating microscopic chemistry that we can't even see.
And to really understand what's coming, we're pulling from a pretty dense stack of sources today.
Very dense.
Yeah. We've got the EPA's latest draft contaminant candidate list 6, or CCL6. We are looking at grant summaries from the Department of Health and Human Services regarding their new STUMP initiative.
Which is a massive program.
Huge. And we are cross-referencing all of this with future-looking market forecasts. So our mission today is to unpack this historic regulatory shift, figure out the actual physics of how your daily operations generate these microplastics, and map out a strategy to get your business ahead of the compliance curve.
The timeline on this is really what makes those sources so critical to synthesize right now. I mean, the EPA didn't just issue a vague white paper on April 2nd.
Right, it's much more formal than that.
Adding microplastics to the CCL6 is the formal on-ramp for federal regulation.
This is step 1.
Yeah. When a contaminant lands on that specific list, the EPA is legally declaring that they are evaluating it for national primary drinking water regulations under the Safe Drinking Water Act. It is step 1 of a locked-in legal mechanism.
Which puts us in a really interesting window. We're sitting in the middle of a 60-day public comment period, and the finalization of this list is slated for November 17th, 2026.
Coming up fast.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I know how the industry thinks. A superintendent hears about an EPA list and thinks, okay, but actual boots-on-the-ground enforcement, the kind that shuts down my job site, that's 5 to 10 years away.
And, well, they aren't wrong about the timeline.
They aren't, but I look at this and I get immediate flashbacks to the silica dust rollout.
Oh, man.
Right. For decades, concrete dust was just a nuisance. You swept it up, maybe wore a paper mask, then OSHA changed the rules, and suddenly you needed HEPA vacuums, wet cutting systems, and documented exposure control plans.
The silica comparison is highly accurate because just like with silica, the regulatory bodies are telegraphing their moves well in advance.
They're showing their hand.
Exactly. The scientific machinery takes time, but the institutional weight is already moving. It's not just the EPA acting in a vacuum here.
Yo, you've got HHS involved too.
Right. The Department of Health and Human Services is backing this entire regulatory push with a $144 million initiative called STUMP.
$144 million, that's not small change.
Not at all. It focuses entirely on the health impacts of these microscopic polymers. When HHS is funneling nearly $150 million into studying the health impacts, and the EPA locks the contaminant onto their regulatory runway, well, the ultimate destination is guaranteed.
I see this 5 to 10 year timeline not as a buffer to relax, but as a long-led procurement item.
That's a great way to look at it.
You don't wait until the structural steel is needed on the second floor to call the fabricator. If you do, your project is dead in the water.
You'd be fired.
Right. You plan for it a year in advance. Yeah. This regulatory timeline is your long-led item. You have to order your operational changes now.
Absolutely.
But to do that, we have to look at the job site itself.
Yeah.
How's a standard commercial build ground zero for microplastics? Because when we talk about this topic, the public imagines sea turtles caught in soda rings or microbeads in cheap face wash.
Yeah, they definitely don't picture a tilt-up warehouse or a municipal library project.
Exactly.
Well, that public perception is exactly why the construction industry is going to be caught totally off guard. Let's look at the actual physics of a job site.
Okay.
Stormwater runoff is really the primary vehicle here. For a century, the industry has managed runoff by managing sediment. The prevailing logic is that if you trap the dirt, you trap the pollution.
Right. Keep the dirt on the site.
But microplastics behave entirely differently than soil. Dirt is heavy. It has a specific gravity that allows it to settle out of water if you just, slow the flow down.
You just give it a minute to sink.
Exactly. Microplastics, on the other hand, are highly hydrophobic, meaning they repel water, and they have a specific gravity very close to water itself.
So they don't sink, they just suspend in the water column or float right over the top of whatever barrier you set up.
Precisely. They are naturally buoyant, and they don't coagulate the way natural silt does.
So where are these buoyant particles even coming from?
Demolition waste is a massive, immediate contributor. When an excavator crushes an existing structure, it is pulverizing decades of synthetic materials.
Old PVC, vapor barriers, that sort of thing?
Yep. Synthetic carpets, epoxy coatings. That mechanical crushing physically generates millions of microscopic plastic shards.
And it's not just the demo phase either. Think about modern concrete mixes.
Oh, the fibers.
Yeah. We used to rely almost exclusively on rebar and welded wire mesh for reinforcement. Now, a massive percentage of concrete utilizes synthetic macro and microfibers mixed directly into the batch.
And those fibers are exposed during finishing, grinding, or any future cutting.
And then you have the everyday tasks. Plumbers running a chop saw through PVC pipe. Electricians grinding plastic conduit. Let's not even get started on spray foam insulation.
Yeah, trying to sweep up overspray bits of foam on a windy Tuesday is already a running joke on most sites.
It's impossible. Here's where it gets really interesting now. Wait, so every time a crew cuts a piece of PVC or sprays foam insulation, they are potentially generating regulated waste. Are we suddenly criminalizing standard building practices?
What's fascinating here is that it's not about criminalizing the work itself, but managing the byproduct. The EPA is realizing that job site dust isn't just dirt anymore, it's synthetic.
It's chemistry.
Right. We have evolved the materials we build with to be highly synthetic and incredibly durable, but our methods for containing the mess haven't evolved at all.
We're still using dirt methods.
Exactly. You cannot manage a 21st century synthetic chemical byproduct using a 20th century dirt trapping methodology.
That makes the failure of our current systems pretty glaring, honestly. If I'm running a site over an acre today, I have a stormwater pollution prevention plan. I've got my best management practices, the BMPs.
Silt fences, sediment basins.
Right, we put down wattles.
Yeah.
But based on the physics you just described, a silt fence is basically a screen door on a submarine when it comes to microplastics.
That's a good visual.
It might stop a visible chunk of a plastic coffee cup from floating into the storm drain, but the microscopic polymers are washing right through the fabric.
Incidental capture is the term environmental engineers use for that.
Incidental capture.
Yeah. Your current BMPs might catch some microplastics, but it is entirely by accident. Silt fences are engineered to filter out particles based on the size and weight of soil aggregates.
Right.
They are legally required to manage turbidity, the cloudiness of the water caused by dirt. They are not engineered, nor are they currently legally required to act as chemical filtration membranes for synthetic polymers.
So if our current sediment traps are catching this stuff by accident, how drastically are the actual permit requirements going to change? They can't just tell us to build a taller silt fence.
You definitely won't. The regulatory shift will bypass the visual methods and go straight to quantifiable chemistry. If we look at Smart Business Automator's market intelligence report, future expectations point heavily towards specific microplastic limits in NPDES permits, meaning incidental capture just won't be enough anymore.
For anyone new to the acronym soup of federal regulations, NPDES is the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System.
Right.
It is the core permitting mechanism under the Clean Water Act. So what you're saying is that instead of a generalized permit requirement to minimize sediment discharge, future permits will dictate a hard parts per million limit on synthetic polymers in the runoff.
That is the trajectory we are on. An inspector won't just look to see if your silt fence has collapsed.
They'll bring a test kit.
Yeah, they will pull a water sample from your discharge point, send it to a lab, and determine if you are exceeding a strict chemical concentration of microplastics. And the regulation won't stop at the water's edge either.
Where else does it go?
Well, this market forecast indicates strict new handling protocols for demolition waste streams. You won't be able to just crush materials and leave them exposed to the elements.
Or load them loosely into roll-offs where dust can blow away.
Exactly.
And I imagine the material specifications themselves will change, especially in the public sector.
Oh, absolutely.
If I'm bidding on a municipal water treatment plant or a city library, The city engineers are going to start writing microplastic restrictions directly into the spec book.
They will.
They will dictate the types of concrete reinforcement fibers you can use, or maybe ban certain types of synthetic temporary weather enclosures.
Which brings us to the most critical impact for the people listening to this deep dive. The physical changes on the job site are one thing. Sourcing a natural cellulose fiber for your concrete instead of a synthetic one is, well, it's a solvable supply chain issue.
You just call a different supplier.
Exactly. The real threat to a scaling construction business is the administrative avalanche this creates.
I was just thinking about the project managers. If I go to my site superintendent tomorrow and tell him that on top of managing 80 subcontractors, tracking RFIs, and dealing with supply chain delays, he now needs to track the microplastic content of our demo waste.
You'd lose it.
Right. Audit the fiber specs in our concrete submittals against new EPA guidelines, and maintain an audit-proof log of enhanced water sampling. He's going to quit.
Without a doubt.
We are taking the people hired to build buildings and turning them into full-time environmental compliance clerks. It's a massive administrative trap.
It is the single biggest bottleneck to scaling a construction firm. When compliance requirements multiply, the traditional response is just to throw more overhead at it.
Hire more people.
Yeah, you hire more project engineers just to read spec books and manage spreadsheets. But margins in construction are already razor thin.
Always.
Relying on manual tracking via static PDFs and nested folders on a shared drive is no longer a viable operational strategy when the regulatory environment gets this complex.
The sheer volume of unstructured data is the problem. You get a 500-page municipal spec book, and buried on page 312 is a new restriction on synthetic vapor barriers.
Good luck finding that manually.
Exactly. A tired project engineer manually cross-referencing that against the architectural drawings at 11 p.m. is going to miss it.
They absolutely will.
And missing that spec change could mean installing material that you are later legally forced to rip out and replace at your own cost.
Which destroys your margin.
So what does this all mean? How does a company actually manage this without bloating their overhead?
This is where we have to look objectively at how artificial intelligence and document intelligence platforms are shifting from a luxury to a baseline necessity.
It's becoming table stakes.
Right. The human brain is incredible at building relationships and solving complex site logistics. It is terrible at scanning thousands of pages of technical documents for a single updated chemical compliance clause.
Software doesn't get tired at 11 p.m.
Exactly. Software platforms designed specifically for construction administration are built to ingest those massive drawing sets and spec books, use natural language processing to identify compliance requirements, and instantly flag discrepancies for the project management team.
So instead of a human searching for the needle in the haystack, the software burns down the haystack and hands you the needle.
Great analogy.
It automatically extracts those new strict material specifications and cross-checks them against the submittals your subcontractors are providing.
And it handles the daily proof of work. Remember, under these coming regulations, being a clean contractor isn't enough. You have to prove you are a clean contractor.
Documentation is everything.
Yes. If an inspector shows up to audit your site's microplastic management and your daily logs are a chaotic mix of handwritten notes and photos lost on someone's personal cell phone.
Which is how half the industry operates.
Right. Well, you are exposed to massive fines. An intelligent document organization system instantly categorizes environmental permits, stormwater plans, and date-stamped compliance photos so that when the audit happens, the proof is accessible in seconds.
That peace of mind is huge.
It is. According to Smart Business Automator's Market Intelligence Report, companies that document current BMPs and track demo waste streams digitally are going to have a massive competitive advantage when these regulations finalize.
That competitive advantage is the exact thread I want to pull on as we wrap up. Because regulatory changes are usually viewed strictly as a defensive problem. You play defense to avoid fines. But let's look at how this impacts bidding strategy, specifically for municipal and public works.
It changes the game entirely.
We know that federal regulation is a slow-moving machine. It might take the EPA that full 5 to 10 years to establish nationwide hard-coded limits, but local governments, a progressive city council or a state-level environmental agency, they move much faster.
Local municipalities can and will act independently. A city council could mandate a zero-added microplastic specification on all new public infrastructure projects by next year.
They don't have to wait.
No, they do not have to wait for the federal machinery to catch up.
Put yourself in the shoes of an estimator 2 years from now. Imagine you are bidding on a highly lucrative municipal infrastructure project. There are two general contractors in the final running. Contractor A is still operating under the old paradigm.
The dirt trapping.
Right. They are relying on standard synthetic materials, manual paperwork, and visual sediment traps. They view microplastics as a future problem.
And Contractor B.
Well, Contractor B read the writing on the wall in 2026. They have already sourced reliable, non-plastic alternatives for concrete reinforcement. They have implemented advanced, multi-stage sediment filtration that accounts for buoyant polymers.
They're ready.
More than ready. Most importantly, they have the digital infrastructure to guarantee, with automated audit-proof reporting, that their site will easily meet the city's strictest new environmental goals. When that city council is reviewing those bids, it isn't even a contest.
Contractor B leverages their operational maturity to box out the competition entirely. They have turned a complex regulatory burden into a unique selling proposition.
Early compliance isn't just a shield, it's a sword.
Right. They can guarantee compliance without inflating their bid price with bloated administrative overhead because they automated the tracking.
The timeline started ticking 9 days ago. The EPA has signaled the punch, and the funding is in place to back it up. Treating this as a distant problem is a strategic error.
A huge error.
The companies that adapt their operations and their administrative workflows today won't just avoid the compliance hammer, they will be the ones winning the most profitable bids tomorrow. If you know a contractor who's dealing with stormwater management or bidding on municipal projects, send them this episode right now. It could save them from massive compliance headaches and help them win their next big bid. Hit follow on whatever app you're listening on so you don't miss tomorrow's intel. To scale your construction business without drowning in the admin work this new regulation will create, visit smartbusinessautomator.com.
The scientific definition of what we are leaving behind in the dirt has fundamentally changed. The smart money is making sure their business isn't the one left in the dust.